So what happens when the one person who's supposed to save you is the one who fails you? I mean, your lawyer is your lifeline when you're facing criminal charges, right? But what if they're your biggest problem? We're going to dive into the case of Ashley Higgins, because her story, well, it shines a massive spotlight on a shocking failure right in the middle of our justice system.
So, back in 2024, the stakes for Ashley Higgins were, they were incredibly high. Just look at this indictment. She was facing 5 criminal counts from the state of Oregon, and we're not talking small stuff here. 3 of them were serious felonies, like attempted assault. Her entire freedom was hanging in the balance.
You know, going up against the full power of the state, that's a scary thought for anyone. But here's the twist in this story. As it all played out, it turned out Ashley's biggest fight wasn't actually with the prosecutors. Nope, it was with her own attorney.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with a defendant's dilemma, then look at a pattern of neglect. After that, we'll get into the verdict and the clock, the huge deadline missed, her legal countermove, and finally, we'll ask the big question, a manifest injustice?
Okay, so let's start with part 1, a defendant's dilemma. And it really was a dilemma, because Ashley wasn't just dealing with one court case. She was juggling 2 at the exact same time.
So the court assigned her one lawyer, an A. Smith, to handle everything. You've got the huge felony trial on one hand, and then this totally separate, smaller charge for hindering prosecution on the other. And the key here is that both cases were happening simultaneously, and this one attorney was supposed to be on top of both of them.
And this is where things start to go sideways. According to her own court filings, this whole situation just spiraled into what she calls a pattern of neglect. And these problems, they started cropping up way before a jury ever even saw the case.
Okay, check this out. It's January 6, 2025. Ashley sends an email to her lawyer. She's expressing, and I'm quoting here, concern about the lack of communication. And get this. She says she's been trying to get a hold of him since November and has heard nothing back. That's months of silence. And it doesn't stop there. Just a few hours later, on the same day, she sends another email. You can literally feel the stress coming through the screen. She writes, "I am growing increasingly anxious," and she has to remind him that these are serious criminal charges that require your immediate attention. It's just wow.
Then, the very next day, January 7th, she tries again. A third email. This time, she's trying to deal with a no-contact order that's affecting her family. She says she has urgent matters to discuss and is feeling the pressure. I mean, these emails, one after another, they paint a really clear picture, right? It's a client who is desperately trying to get help from her lawyer and is getting nothing but radio silence.
All right, now we're getting to the really critical part of the story, the verdict and the clock. This is where huge, life-altering decisions had to be made, all while this communication nightmare is going on in the background.
So on April 24th, even with all these problems, Ashley does what most clients do. She trusts her lawyer's advice. She pleads guilty to that lesser charge, the hindering prosecution one. At this point, she's still counting on his professional judgment.
Then, the verdict from her big felony trial comes in, and it's a real mixed bag. A bit of a shock, actually. The jury acquits her, finds her not guilty of the really serious charges, 2 of which were felonies. But they convict her on 2 lesser counts, unlawful use of a weapon and disorderly conduct. So it's not a clear win, not a clear loss. It's complicated.
So, right after her sentencing on May 29th, her legal documents are crystal clear on this. She told her attorney, "I want to appeal those 2 convictions." And under Oregon law, that's it. The moment she said that, a clock started ticking. A very strict, non-negotiable 30-day clock to get that appeal filed.
And this is where the whole story hits its breaking point. The absolute point of no return. A deadline missed. Okay, so this timeline lays it all out. May 29th, she says, file the appeal. The deadline is 30 days later, June 28th. That date comes, and it goes. Silence. So by July 7th, she's heard absolutely nothing, and she takes matters into her own hands. She files an ethics complaint against her own lawyer with the Oregon State Bar.
And in that formal complaint she filed, her own words just cut right through any confusion. She says, and I'm quoting directly, "I clearly communicated my desire to appeal." You can't get much clearer than that. No ambiguity at all.
Okay, this slide right here, this is basically the smoking gun. On the left, you see the hard deadline, June 28th, circled in red. Can't miss it. On the right, an email from her lawyer to the State Bar. Now look at that date, August 4th. That's more than a month after the deadline. And what does he write? I have Miss Higgins' appeal started. Started. He's openly admitting, in writing, that he's just beginning the process. He blew right past the deadline.
And the official proof of this whole mess? It's this document right here, a motion to file late appeal. You only have to file something like this for one reason, because you missed the deadline. And the best part? It says right there in black and white why it was late. It says the trial attorney failed to timely submit a referral form. So now his failure is officially part of the court record. It's undeniable.
So what do you do when your own lawyer has failed you so spectacularly? Well, this leads us to Ashley's really incredible legal countermove. This is where she brilliantly connects the dots between her two cases. Now representing herself, which is amazing in itself, Ashley files this motion to withdraw guilty plea. And this is for the other case, remember, the one she pleaded guilty in. And her argument is just so smart. She's basically saying, look, if my lawyer was so incompetent that he missed a basic, critical deadline in my main case, how can you possibly say his advice in my other case, advice he gave me at the exact same time, was any good? She's arguing that his proven failure in one case completely invalidates his work in the other.
And with that move, she's not just fighting for herself. She's forcing the entire court system to face a huge legal question, which brings us to our final section, a manifest injustice.
See, the core of her entire argument comes down to this big constitutional idea called ineffective assistance of counsel. It's a right guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment. And all it really means is that if your lawyer's performance is so terrible, so deficient, that it basically robbed you of a fair trial, that's a violation of your rights.
Now, to prove this in court, you have to pass something called the Strickland test. It's got two parts. First, you have to show that your lawyer's work was just objectively bad, like below the basic standard of what a reasonable lawyer would do. And yeah, completely missing a critical appeal deadline, that is a perfect textbook example. The second part is you have to show that this mistake actually hurt you, that it caused prejudice. And losing your one chance to appeal your conviction, well, that's about as harmful as it gets.
And so all of this leaves us with the powerful question that Ashley Higgins has now put right in front of the court. Can one single catastrophic failure by a lawyer, a mistake so big it's now officially documented, be so bad that it poisons everything else they did for a client? Does it create what the law calls a manifest injustice, something so wrong that the system has to give you a do-over? The court's answer to that question could redefine just what the right to a good lawyer really means.